Host John Sarianides, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, a man who has achieved such a legendary status that some are encouraging him to run for office. Kevin Stone. Kevin, how are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you? And it can't be much worse, right?
In terms of what?
Locally, I'm saying it can't be
Oh,
much worse.
yeah, I hear you there. Now, we are running a little behind tonight. Part of the reason is we did have some power outage issues here in Foxborough, but it appears that those have been resolved and we are back on track here. And obviously, of course, like we do every show, we started by talking about Patriots. Now, of course, when we last were with you last week on the New England Football Show, it was day one of free agency. The Patriots had signed Draymond Jones and they had signed Elijah Vera Tucker. Well, they signed him the next morning, but they didn't really sign most of the guys that they ended up signing until after that. So on Tuesday and Wednesday, of course, the big signing on Wednesday was former Packers wide receiver Romeo Doubs. And Kevin, you were up there on Thursday when all the free agents were introduced. What was the sense you got being around those guys? You've obviously been around the team now for 5 years. You were around last year's team. I was around last year's team. Based on your early impressions of what you saw from those guys, A, are they going to fit in well here culturally? Because all we've heard since Mike Vrabel got this job last January is the emphasis placed on culture. And B, are the Patriots a better football team now? I wrote about this last week on anyfootballjournal.com, and I openly talked about how I thought they were a better football team than they were last year, despite winning 17 games and getting to the Super Bowl. Where do you sit on all this?
So I don't know if they're better. I'd say they're, you know what? No, they are better. It's not significant, but I do think you have an upgrade in Romeo Dobbs over Diggs. And look, I know that's hard to say when he just put up 1,000 yards, but he disappeared in the playoffs. And he really kind of disappeared down the stretch. So I think you're going to get a full season out of Dobbs. And that's not to say you didn't out of Diggs, but when you needed him in the biggest moments, he was not there down the stretch. So I think Dobbs can give you that, especially in the red zone. As a Packer fan, I know, or Packer shareholder, I know you can speak to him a little bit better than probably anybody else in this market. But look, Reggie Gilliam is no nonsense. I spent most of the time with Kevin Byard. I love that signing. I really do. I love the idea of having a veteran like that, not only on the back end of your defense, but in your locker room too. You've lost a good amount of guys that really bought into that culture that we talked about and that Vrabel talked about. You just lost Jack Gibbons today. Jelani Tavai's out the door. Who am I missing? There's a few guys. Um,
Well, they cut Anthony Jennings.
yes, thank you.
They cut Jelani Tavai.
Yep. So
they did not resign Kyrus Tonga.
yes, that's
Obviously,
another
they
one.
didn't resign Jalen Hawkins.
Yeah,
So they moved on from a lot of guys that I think when we think back to last year, they moved on from a lot of guys that, quite frankly, were key cogs to this operation. They
yeah.
were important players. But clearly, Vrabel wanted to put his own stamp on it. And I think this offseason was more about clearing the decks. You saw a lot of that last year when they moved on from Wise and Jones and Andrews. This offseason was getting the last remaining guys that didn't either fit the scheme or that Vrabel didn't think could produce enough to help the team win. Those guys were swept out now. And look, it's hard, right? Because you won football games last year with Jelani Tavai and Anthony Jennings, and even some of the free agents they signed, Diggs, Tonga, and those guys. But I think at the end of the day, Kevin, what it comes down to is I think, and I know, and I said this yesterday on the Patriots Pulse show, that Vrabel wants to win with his guys. And both Johns pushed back on the notion, saying, well, is it that important for him to win with his guys? I think it is. I think he wants to win with the Kevin Byards of the world. And that's why he brought them in. I think he sees them as guys that have already bought into him. They've already bought into the program. Not just a matter of them staying healthy and producing.
Yeah, no, totally. And just to kind of round out my point, the day overall, two things stood out. One, the guys want to be here. And Elliot Wolf was asked about this later in the day. And he said, yeah, it's been great. I think he said the exact word he used was sweet. You know, guys want to play for Vrabel. And and want to play for Drake May or with Drake May in a short amount of time. And that wasn't a guarantee. Like to go on the run they did, yeah, it was nice for the fan base and for us to cover. You always want to see a team compete for a Super Bowl. That's why we watch. But to make this a destination this quickly is impressive. And they did that. And I think everyone, the free agents that spoke the other day, spoke to that point about, wanting to be part of a winning culture. That wasn't a winning culture these last 3 or 4 years. So the organization deserves credit for making this a destination again very, very quickly. And a guy like Bayard, he could have stayed in Chicago. He's going into year 12, I think it is. He didn't have to pack up and move, but he did because he believed in what the Patriots are doing. So I think the overall theme of the day was just it's nice to sort of be back in that conversation for the Patriots.
Well, I don't know if I'd say he didn't want to move or didn't have to move. He did because the Bears didn't extend an offer. And he
Sure.
said this when he
Yeah.
met with you guys on Thursday that it was either he was going to go back to Chicago or come here and play for Mike Vrabel. Patriots made him the 1 year offer for $9 million. He chose to come here. Look, Bayard's a good football player. Led the NFL in interceptions last year with 7. He was an All-Pro. I don't know how much stock I put in the All-Pro thing. I know a lot of people do. I'm not sure I put as much stock into that or the Pro Bowl anymore, primarily
Well,
because the
it's
Pro
more than
Bowl in
Pro Bowl, right?
particular means nothing.
Well, it
So
still it still means more than the Pro Bowl, though. No.
all pro means more than the
Yeah.
Pro
Yeah.
Bowl.
Yeah.
But that's the point I'm trying to make, that you can put some stock into him being an all pro, but I'm not putting any stock into anybody being a Pro Bowler because you don't have a Pro Bowl anymore.
Yeah. It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't mean anything. So I look, Kevin Byard's a good football player. Now I will say, and I said this yesterday as well, I think you lose a little something here though by letting Jalen Hawkins walk out the door, because I do think he gives you a little bit more over the top in terms of range and ability to play the ball. Hawkins made some spectacular plays this year, and a couple of impressive interceptions during the course of the season. In the season opener against the Raiders, he had another impressive pick against the Browns. He really flashes athleticism and his ability to close and make plays on the ball last year. You're not going to get that from Kevin Byard. I think they're hoping that you get that from Craig Woodson, who proved he can do that in college when he was at Cal. But that's not Kevin Byard's game. Kevin Byard is a guy that's gonna play downhill. He's gonna drop in his zones. He's gonna run the alley and stop the run. He's a guy that plays on the first and second level. That's really his game. He can play over the top in a too high look, but he's not that rotation safety or that single high safety that can go middle of the field to either sideline. He doesn't have that range. Jalen Hawkins had that range. So
Well,
you obviously gave up something there, but I equated the Bayard signing, and I think you may agree with me on this. I equated that signing to Bill Belichick signing Ronnie Harrison in 2003. Harrison came with baggage, though, and he was a different player. But I feel like it's that kind of signing. And Vrabel played with Harrison, of course, so he knows the impact he made here. I almost feel to a degree that Vrabel felt we needed that experience on the back end. We needed a guy that can come in and make that difference and help us get over the hump. A guy like Kevin Byard could be that guy.
Well, it's funny. Someone actually brought that up to him. I think it might have been Ben Volen, who asked him about being compared to Rodney Harrison. He quickly shot it down and said, Vrabel doesn't like comparisons, but I think it's a good one. But I'll ask you this: he led the league in interceptions last year. If if the range is off compared to Hawkins, what makes him that player in terms of being a ball hawk?
Well, I mean, look, he can lead the league in interceptions. That doesn't mean that he can play over the top and has range. I mean, I didn't see any of his picks, so I don't know how he ended up picking those passes off. But I'm not saying you can't play over the top, but you don't just make plays on the ball over the top. In fact,
Yeah.
most of your interceptions in the secondary are going to come in the intermediate area. So I don't think he made a lot of spectacular over the top plays and picked off the ball that way. I think at the end of the day, you are losing something here in comparison to Jalen Hawkins. I know you love the signing. I know people are going to tongue bathe the signing, but I don't care what anybody says. I think you're losing something over the top here. You have to hope that Craig Woodson can be that guy that can play in those single high looks or those rotation looks where he's the single high safety, because
Yeah.
it's not going to be Kevin Byard. And if it is, it probably will be in plus territory or the red zone. He's not that guy that can cover that ground, especially if the ball's in the middle of the field. He can't cover the kind of ground that Jalen Hawkins did. Let's not forget, Hawkins is a younger player too. So I think we have to take that into account. And by the way, he wasn't unemployed very long. The Baltimore Ravens signed him to a 2-year, $10 million deal. So he
Yeah.
found work pretty quick. But again, I like what they did in free agency. I know people are going to say, okay, you really think Romeo Doubs is an upgrade over Stephon Diggs? I do. I think Diggs's numbers were very misleading last year. I'm not getting hung up on the 85 catches, the 1,000 yards, and the 4 touchdowns. I think the 4 touchdowns are more indicative of who he was for them last year as a player than the 85 catches were, because I believe he had 14 games last year. I think Doug Kai tweeted this out last week. I think he had like 14 games where he had less than 50 yards or some stupid stat like that. So, I mean, again, I think Romeo Doubs, yes, he didn't have the numbers that Diggs did, but I think in a lot of ways for the Patriots, he could be a lot more productive. Elijah Vera Tucker, he is a clear upgrade at left guard. Big thing with him is he's got to stay healthy, but he is an upgrade over Jared Wilson, who's going to slide to center. You mentioned Reggie Gilliam. We know the Patriots' affinity for playing in 21, 22 personnel. Jack Westover did a really good job last year, but he's not a true fullback. Gilliam is. He'll slide in there and give them a thumper at that position. And even some of the other guys that they signed. I like the KJ Britt signing, young linebacker who can be a backup spot starter. He'll play on all your special teams. Same thing with Gilliam. So I like what they did. And that's why I feel they're a better football team. Again, I think a lot of people are going to look at this and say, well, it's hard to say that they won 17 games and got to a Super Bowl this past season, but it's really not. I think that they will potentially have a worse record next year and be a better football team, which again may sound oxymoronic, but I think that could be the case.
No, I agree. I was actually thinking about this the other day. They're going to take steps back. Like they're not going 13-4 again. I don't think the schedule is just too hard. Just to go back to the Bayard signing, I hear you on the type of player he is. I like it just for the veteran presence. You know how much stock I put into locker room guys, and again, you listen to Vrabel and talk about how much keeping that culture instilled matters. Bayer's a guy who's going to do that. That's a guy who has, I think he's missed 2 snaps his entire career, if I'm not mistaken. That's insane to have that kind of longevity in the NFL. So, if nothing else, he's going to be a great example for the young guys in terms of consistency and taking care of your body as well. So, look, and they're probably not done, right? Like, it's only week 2
Oh
of free
no,
agency.
no, they're not
So,
done.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think they are slightly better now, and I don't think they're done.
All right, we've got some comments coming in. Our good friend Scott checks in. He says, you have my vote, Kevin. So Scott would vote for you for governor. Scott, should I take out the frying pan, crack an egg, and show you what your brain looks like on drugs? I don't know. Thanks for checking in, brother. He checks in again. He says, I got to disagree. I mean, the opportunities were not there down the stretch, no protection, bad weather. I'll still vote for you though. Verbal, yes, Mike Verbal. Poor Tiffany Haddish. I don't think she's ever going to live that down. Scott says, but probably not worth all that money. Restructures contract. He was pretty pumped here. His heart was in it.
Well, on the money thing, and I'm sure we were going to get to Elliot Wolf at some point, he didn't close that door the other day, and I was kind of surprised by it. But he also said, there's a lot of factors that go into it, like the production. So it was kind of like two-sided there. Did you feel the same way?
He's not coming back. I don't
I don't
believe
think
he's
so
coming
either.
back.
No, I don't
I,
either.
I do think the door is closed. I thought that Wolf was very uh, political in that response. I mean, he wasn't. He shouldn't rule it out. You can never rule it out. But I don't see any scenario where Diggs comes back. I think he was very PC with that response. I think Diggs is done here. I don't think he's going to play here again. I think it's over. If he does come back, I'll be surprised. You can never say never, I suppose, but I don't see it. I think that they are going to move on. I think this AJ Brown talk is real. I think that if they bring in that veteran receiver, that's how they want to do it. They've already brought in Dobbs. I think Brown is going to be their target throughout the offseason. Could they add a guy who could compete for a third or a fourth spot in free agency? Sure. Could they add another receiver in the draft? Absolutely. I could totally see that. But if they're going to go the veteran route, I think we all agree it's going to be AJ Brown, but I think Stephon Diggs is done here. And look, I honestly never believed, and it's more than just the potential for the $26 million cap hit or the $6 million roster bonus. I just think at the end of the day, I thought Vrabel did a really nice job managing him. I thought the offensive staff did a really good job of managing Diggs and keeping him engaged. And for the most part, and I think you would agree with me on this, he was a pro to deal with. But I think in the end, they know he's turning 33 during the season. It's not going to get better. His production is only going to continue to decrease. And while, yes, I still think he probably has a couple good years left in him, I don't think that Vrabel and the Patriots wanted to chance it and bring him back. I think they wanted to move on. They got as much as they could get out of him. But I think that their focus now, in terms of a veteran receiver, is seeing if they can acquire A.J. Brown.
No, I agree. The only thing I thought about today, and I want your take on it, it's a guy we haven't even mentioned once in the last 2 weeks, and it's Tyreek Hill. And I was immediately, as soon as he became a free agent, I thought, no shot, way too much baggage, all of that. But the longer he stays out there, I can't help but feel like they might take a shot on him. I
Nope,
still wouldn't.
nope, it
I
ain't
know
gonna
I wouldn't
happen.
either.
It
Yeah, I
is
know.
not gonna happen. I can guarantee you it's not happening.
So I don't think so
I'll,
either.
I'll say this: if you sign Tyreek Hill, don't bullshit me with culture talk. I don't want to hear it
Right,
anymore.
right. That's the
I don't
thing.
want to hear about culture talk. I don't want to see any more footage of him shaking hands. I don't want to hear about we laid a foundation and we're going to add to it and we're going to do it with good people. Yada yada yada. I don't want to hear any of that. I'm not interested in Tyreek Hill. I don't want to see him here. I still think he can be productive. I still think he will play somewhere next season when he's fully healthy and could potentially contribute. But if you're serious about building a strong culture, one that is sustainable and winning football games with that culture, you cannot bring that guy into your locker room. Sorry. I don't care how good a citizen he would be. I don't want him here. Miss me with Tyreek Hill
I don't.
as I drop my phone.
No, I totally agree. It's weird that I thought someone might just take a flyer on him already. And just the fact that he's out there, um, I don't know. I feel like someone like them could take a shot just because of how cheap it would be, and the contract would have to be under their terms. Like he's not going to be able to negotiate his way into some major deal. Like he's going to have to play on a team's terms. That's the only reason I think it could. There's like a 1% chance, but I'm with you. Culture wise, no shot. You can't do it.
No, I think it's a 0% chance. I don't think there's any chance he ends up here. I don't think he ever plays it down here. It's not going to happen. And I think it goes beyond the culture piece. You mentioned the baggage. It's just way too much. Here's the thing with
Yeah,
Stephon Diggs. Was there some teammate baggage there? If you remember back when he was in Minnesota, they had polled his teammates as to which teammate of theirs they wouldn't want dating their sister, and like I think 8 of 10 of them said him. There was some chatter that him and Josh Allen didn't get along at the end there before he got traded to Houston.
but
Even in
it's diva
Houston, there was
receiver
some talk
stuff.
that he was self-serving.
Yeah,
He didn't exactly endear himself here last year with the whole boat incident. But at the end of the day, when you compare Stephon Diggs and his missteps to Tyreek Hill and his missteps, it's a Grand Canyon esque gap in terms of who's the better dude, and that's Stephon Diggs, and he proved it last year.
yeah.
If you told me that they were going to re-sign Diggs, I'd be okay with it. I wouldn't have a problem with it. But Tyreek Hill, nope, I'm all set.
No, I hear you. And look, Diggs' issues, to your point, that's just typical number one diva receiver kind of stuff. Hill is legitimately probably a bad dude. So I'm with you. It's a weird feeling I kind of had that he's still out there. Just we were on the receiver talk. Just on Diggs, I feel like that has Kansas City written all over it.
Well, I also think Kansas City could be in for a reunion with Hill. The longer he sits
Yeah,
out there, the greater I think the chances that he ends up back in Kansas City.
that's
I
a team
mean,
that doesn't
Andy
care
Reid
about
doesn't
culture.
give a shit about character. He wants to
Right.
win Super Bowls. He doesn't care about character. Everybody loves Big Red, the jolly fat offensive coach. But at the end of the day, he doesn't care about character. He doesn't care about building a team with character and camaraderie and character mattering. He doesn't care. If he did, they probably would have moved on from Ray Shee Rice. So I think at the end of the day, I could see him back there, but here, no way, no chance. So we'll see. And I agree with you, by the way. I mean, I don't think that they're done per se, but I think a lot of what they need now, which is primarily depth, I do think a lot of that depth is going to be acquired in next month's draft. I think that's what we're going to see. Some big news today, a couple of important pieces of news coming out of Foxborough today. Of course, the Patriots' new facility is slated to open later on this year, and it appears today, and you wrote about it, Patriots have a new title sponsor.
Yeah, keeping it local with New Balance. New Balance now has the BC athletic program and the Patriots. So good partnership there. I think kind of makes sense for both sides. And it's now going to be the New Balance practice fields, the New Balance athletic center, and it's going to be training camp presented by New Balance. So get ready for all the imaging and the towels and all of that this summer. But I know we're looking forward to seeing the inside of that place. We're going to have a workroom in there as well. There's going to be press conferences, a new weight room, a new locker room. So it's, and again, as you said, I wrote about this today. One of the biggest factors of this is just what it means for free agency. Like, it's a small thing to have your own facility, but it's been that way for 20 years. And we keep seeing the report cards every year about guys not liking the dining room and not liking the weight room. So something as small as this fitness center or athletic center opening, it could entice free agents in the future. I know, people don't really think about that, but it's a big thing in terms of, the new weight room, the new locker room and all that. So it's a good step forward for the team and the partnership with New Balance. Hopefully get some nice sneakers and good team wear out of it.
Well, I think in the end, with free agents, it comes down to money and winning.
Oh, of course, yeah,
If you're winning and the
it
money's
doesn't
right,
hurt.
they're going
Is
to
what I'm
come
saying.
here. Does it help? Sure. Facilities, I think, help more with college kids than they do with pro guys,
Oh,
but
definitely.
it
Yeah.
doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to have better facilities. I think a lot is made about the report card, especially around here. But I think people need to remember also when Bill Belichick ran things, they had one of the small scouting departments in the league. They had one of the smallest front offices in the league. They did not invest a lot in infrastructure. And I think a lot of those things were masked by Tom Brady and the winning. Well, Tom Brady's gone. They stopped winning. And I think people looked at it and said, well, wait a minute. You don't have an analytics department. Your scouting department's not big enough. Your front office structure is not big enough. You need to add people to all these departments. And then on top of that, your infrastructure is not any good. How the hell did you win all those years? Well, because again, you had Belichick, Brady, and you had an owner that was willing to spend to win. He was willing to spend on players other than the quarterback who was taking discounts. But I think at the end of the day, and those times have changed now. Those days are over. You need to invest in the infrastructure of your franchise. You need to invest in personnel and analytics. All of those things matter nowadays, and it appears that at least over the course of the past year, Robert Kraft is doing that.
Yeah, I mean, look, he gets it, and I wonder if because that facility was going up, I believe when Mayo was still here, so I wonder if it played a factor in Vrabel taking the job. Obviously, to your point,
Oh yeah.
money matters first.
Well,
You
he
get a
knows
quarterback.
the area. He played here. He won
Right?
championships here. He knows the owner's committed to winning. He
Yeah.
knew he was coming into a situation where he was going to have a franchise quarterback
Mhm.
potentially, and you have this new facility opening up, and Kraft was willing to write him the check that he wanted in terms of his pay. I mean, it made too much sense for him to come, not to come here.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's good for the future of the organization more than anything else. Maybe more so than in the short term. Like, yes, they're probably going to be a winning team or a competitive team. Sorry, if I get the words out, a competitive team going forward. But this partnership and the announcement and the opening of this building. This is for the next decade plus of the organization. That's where this matters.
Yep. Scott checks back in. I should say. He says, "I've got my membership with Planet Fitness. I'm going to stay put. I'm not moving to Foxborough just to use the New Balance weight facility. There you go. So Scott, to quote our good friend Joe Murray, is out on the New Balance facility. He does remind us again, and although this doesn't matter to me as much anymore now because the weather is warming up here. Of course, it's going to be 38 on Wednesday. But Scott says, by the way, I'm in the warm weather here in Central Florida. Good vibes. Enjoy it, man. You're a lucky man. Good vibes indeed. Although it was 60 degrees here today. So not too bad. Again, as I mentioned, it's going to be 38 on Wednesday. So the warm weather never really truly lasts up here. Coaching staff was announced today as well. Of course, the coordinators both returning, Josh McDaniels and Zach Kerr. Terrell Williams is the associate head coach of defense. And then the rest of the staff pretty much returns intact with a couple of additions.
No, yeah, Terrell's exact title is assistant head coach. So that's significant because we talked about this even before they made that move. I think it might have even been, minutes after the Super Bowl, talking to John Lyons, and we were wondering, is Zach Core going to be the defensive coordinator, or was he going to be gone? So to do what they did, I think is smart. You keep Terrell in the building. The guy doesn't lose his job because of cancer. Zach Cord sticks around. Now has the ear of the defense, has shown he can call plays in a big spot. And then in terms of the rest of the staff, I think continuity is huge. This staff is going to get poached. Like, that's how the NFL works. These guys aren't going to be together for that much longer. To at least be able to run it back for another season, I think is huge. And we keep mentioning that culture, but having a staff that the players trust and know coming back in for year two, I think is massive. Because again, I would be shocked if 2 or 3 of these guys are still here after next season, assuming they win and start getting some interviews from other coaches.
Yeah, I mean, I keep coming back to a guy like Thomas Brown, who could potentially
Even
be
Ashton Grant.
gone next offseason. I thought he would have gotten more interest this offseason, especially coming off the season that the Patriots had. But absolutely, you're going to start to see other new head coaches poach this staff. Brown's a guy that'll probably interview for head coaching jobs again next offseason. He could potentially land one depending on how next season goes to the Patriots. You have position coaches who could potentially interview for coordinator jobs elsewhere and get that opportunity. So we all know how hard it is to maintain continuity on an NFL staff. The fact that Vrabel, for the most part, with the exception of a couple of changes, was able to keep this staff together, I think says a lot. I also think it speaks to, I should say, the loyalty that these guys have shown to him. A lot of them, of course, were with him in Tennessee. Scott says, so what changes were made with coaching? Nothing major, just a couple of assistant position coach changes, but that was it.
Yeah, no, our guy Vinny DePalma got promoted to inside linebackers coach, so congrats to him. But yeah, nothing major. Again, I think just keeping Williams in the building is important. It's another set of eyes. He was supposed to be the DC. Like, there's a reason Vrabel brought him here, and he even said it during opening night of the Super Bowl week. Like, he was in meetings. Like, he was a huge part of what that defensive staff was still able to do last year, even while he was dealing with what he was dealing with.
Yeah, well, they did a masterful job of keeping it together defensively. To your point about what Terrell Williams was dealing with, again, that's a credit not just to Zach Kerr, and Vrabel has spoken to this, but also that defensive staff. It's a terrific, terrific group of guys that came together and kept it together while Coach T was going through treatment and dealing with his illness. I think it speaks to the quality of the people that Mike Vrabel has brought into this Patriots organization. You are watching the New England Football Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. Let's shift gears here now, talk a little bit of college football. Of course, you and I were together on Saturday at Boston College for our spring visit. We talked a lot about practice and everything else after practice. And of course, you can find that 21-minute video on X as well as our Instagram and Facebook pages. But overall, going back to it and just to summarize what we saw, for me, I was really impressed. I was impressed with the pace of practice. I was impressed with how on point the new guys looked. It looked like they were comfortable in the schemes. I thought the defense looked really good under Ted Roof. I thought that they won the day. Quarterbacks had their moments where they impressed me. Their running back group, we talked about this on Saturday. Their running back group is probably going to be the strength of the offense. Their secondary looks really good. That's going to be the strength of their defense. Of course, you've got KP Price, Carter Davis back there at safety, anchoring the defense. Overall, I was really impressed. It's early, right? We don't want to get too excited because you've only had 3 spring practices. But again, like we said on Saturday, and we'll echo that, if you're a Boston College football fan, the early returns, and there it's the way too early returns, but the way too early returns are that things are going in the right direction. That this team might have a shot at being a lot more competitive next year than they were this past season.
Yeah, it's funny. I said it Saturday. I'm easily bought by good spring ball, and because it's the first impression you have, right? Like we have nothing else to go off of but these 3 practices. So yeah, it's going to be positive at this point. I mean, unless there's just interceptions every single play or fumbles every play, and that's not the case. It's been, and I said this to you before we even talked on Saturday. The back and forth is what stood out to me so far. This time of year, especially, this, you want good back and forth. You want the defense to win a few periods and the offense to win a few periods. And I think you've seen that through 3 days. Overall, yeah, the defense has kind of sort of owned the day, but that's where you have most of your returners. Like we talked about it, it's a brand new roster, or half brand new roster, mostly on offense. Sure, you have some additions on defense. One of them being Anthony Polano, who stood out to me at linebacker already from Washington State. He's going to be I think he's the alpha in that room already, just sort of leading that group. But secondary, unquestionably, is their best unit defensively, and the running backs, like you mentioned, unquestionably their best and deepest on offense. Evan Dickens, Nolan Ray, Bo McCormick is going to be a big factor in the offense this year.
Got a chance to speak with his parents on Saturday. Yeah. Wonderful people.
Awesome. And he's gotten bigger too. He's definitely hitting the weight room at BC. So look, yeah, there's reason to be encouraged. And yes, it's early. The receivers are actually sort of the biggest question to me right now. I don't know if you got that impression on Saturday, but nobody really stands out. Like Jaden Skeet's working back from an injury. We know what he is. And I do think the transfer of Jabarius Green from UNC is going to be a factor. But other than that, it's just sort of a group of guys. And that's not to say they're not talented, but no one's really standing out yet. So I'd expect that to kind of come in the next few practices. They're back at it tomorrow morning. Obviously I'll be there. But yeah, there's more talent there that I think people expect. Offensive and defensive line, that's been 50-50. I feel like, back and forth. Just a lot of unproven guys. Again, and I think you feel the same way. There's talent there, just not experience. And as long as they keep getting that experience and working with the staff, there's a quiet confidence in that building, especially with the staff this year. I generally believe that.
Yeah, so do I. And we heard that talk a couple of weeks ago that this staff really enjoys working together, that they've come together pretty quickly and they've gotten on the same page. And as I mentioned, I was really impressed with the defense. The defense typically does get off to a stronger start in spring ball, fall camp than the offense does. But man, new defensive coordinator Ted Roof had those guys running around. And look, there's some guys on this defense that are going to be difference makers. They have a lot more length at defensive end and edge. I think they're more athletic in the secondary. And then you mentioned Polano. I think he's going to be an X factor for them at linebacker position, which has been a problem spot through the years. But
just for other
I think, in my view, yes, I agree with you. Wide receiver so far, and again, it's only 3 spring practices, looks like a question mark. But I thought overall they still have a lot to figure out up front on both sides of the ball. But I think overall it looks, at least early on, that they've got the right guys in the right spots at every other position.
Yeah, no, sorry to cut you off. On linebacker, Bodie Cahoon, the kid from Notre Dame, he's been making a few plays, especially in the run game here and there. So he's a name to watch. Tight end, we talked about Kevin Jasinski. He's already number 1. I mean, he was that guy last year behind Jeremiah Franklin, and he's already looked better. And then just one other thing. You mentioned the edge. Mika Amidi and Josiah Griffin, two local guys, they could play huge factors this year for this team.
I agree. I agree. Scott checks back in. He says, "Sorry to sound like a broken record. I just love it." By the way, I think he was talking about. Oh yeah, Scott had said it's Mike Verbal. Yeah, so he's a big Tiffany Haddish fan. He says, "Sorry to sound like a broken record. I just love it." By the way, Kevin, I think you're the alpha. So Scott thinks you're an alpha, and I know that you could probably bench press Mr. Stone with your left hand while eating a Pop Tart with your right. Back in the day, I could do that for sure. Now, probably not. Not at my advanced age. I don't lift like I used to. I've been a lifelong weightlifter, but
The real
I've
question,
scaled back more. It's more band work now, resistance stuff, plate workouts, kettlebell stuff. It's not bench press, squat, that stuff, deadlift. I'm way past my appropriate age to be doing that stuff.
the real question is, what flavor Pop Tart would you use?
Not the biggest Pop Tarts guy. Probably have to say the brown sugar.
Sam.
Yeah, I'd probably say the brown sugar is. I'll be sitting there, lifting you with one hand and eating the Pop Tart with the other.
Toasted or non-toasted?
Toasted. I feel like
Hmm.
I feel like if you eat them not toasted, it's flavored cardboard. I'm not
Well,
a big fan of them not. I'll eat them not toasted whenever I feel like having them, which isn't often, but I'd prefer toasted,
this won't shock you. I was a non-toasted guy.
of course. It doesn't shock me. It checks out. I 100% believe you. So, and I actually know a lot of people who prefer having them not toasted. So there you go. I mean, Pop Tarts is an acquired taste for me. I'm not
Yeah, no,
I'm not going
I
to go
don't
out of
dabble
my way to
anymore.
have a Pop Tart, especially at 51 years old. I mean, too old to be eating that shit. And I know everybody's into them now again with the Pop Tart bowl, but yeah, I'm not a big Pop Tarts guy. Um, no, I agree with you. I mean, again, I think that, and this is why you have spring practice and fall camp, right? To answer some of the questions you're going to have. They certainly have an abundance of them at some positions, specifically wide receiver, but they'll use the spring to sort things out. Um, Doing a quick whip around New England, UConn is on break this week. They're on spring break, so they have paused spring practice. Early returns for Jason Candle's first spring practice have been pretty good. The quarterback competition is definitely heating up. I think that competition at UConn is going to go well into fall camp. Sacred Heart, Holy Cross kicked off spring practices this week. Stonehill kicks off spring practice this week. UMass is going to be kicking off spring practice here in the next week. Brown is kicking off spring practice. Dartmouth is kicking off spring practice, as is Yale. Harvard has already kicked off spring practice. Bryant is on break this week. They've already kicked off spring practice. So they're all starting now in earnest. Holy Cross is one that intrigues me. Crusaders coming off a 3-9 season, very unholy cross like based on the success they've had in recent years. This is a big year for Dan Curran's squad. You're going to be there on Thursday for Holy Cross Pro Day and to do a camp visit with the Crusaders. They were busy this winter in the transfer portal, brought in a lot of talent. Datrell Jones, former CM standout from Boston College, comes to Worcester. Brady Fodor from UConn comes to Worcester. Cooper Ackerman of Shrewsbury comes to Worcester from UConn. Rushane Verlaine, former Bishop Hendricken standout, who was at Kentucky, transfers to Holy Cross. So Dan Curran and his staff did a really good job of fortifying the roster through the portal. They're going to need all of these guys to step up and play a big part in turning things around because, as you know, the Patriot League is a much tougher league to win now with the additions of William and Mary, Villanova, and of course, Richmond last year.
It's funny. I kind of like this spot, especially for a Dan Curran coach team. Look, they were in every game last year. They just couldn't score. Defensively, they were phenomenal last year. If you remember that URI game, I think URI was top 10 in the country at that point. It was, what, 6-3 or something crazy like that. I can't remember the exact score, but extremely low scoring defensive struggle. And they also play an extremely hard schedule, both in conference and out of conference. I'm pretty sure they have Harvard and Yale this year, if I'm not mistaken. They
They
usually do,
do.
but Yeah. So, and Miami of Ohio, I want to say, as well as on their schedule. I could be wrong, but we had talked to Coach Robat a week or so ago, and they're very high on a lot of the kids that they have. So if they can figure out the QB competition, you mentioned a guy like
That's
that
going to be their biggest question mark.
by
And you
far.
got Pitt
Yeah,
transfer David Lynch coming in to compete against Cal Swanson,
from Pitt.
the Illinois transfer last year.
Yeah.
That to me is their biggest question mark, and then the one area that they're going to need to figure out.
Yeah, no, and the fact that a kid like David Lynch, well, I know we had some local ties, but the fact he's willing to come to Holy Cross speaks volumes about the type of coach and program that place still has being ran there. That was really a proper sentence. I don't know what the hell I just said.
Well, you're
Um,
from Waltham. It happens.
no, but and you know this too with Dan Curran. He's not going to take it losing lying down. Like that's coaching staff was ready to go seconds after the season ended last year. Just look what he did at Merrimack. Like that team continued to battle and battle and should have earned an FCS playoff berth once, if not twice, during his time there. So I have full confidence that Holy Cross will be right back in the Patriot League hunt this year. That quarterback competition is going to be fun, though. David Lynch is a really good quarterback. And again, the fact that he was willing to come from Pitt, um, you know, yeah, he probably thinks he's going to win the job and thought there's more playing time there, but he's going to have to earn it just like everybody else. So competition breeds a lot of not animosity, but just a lot of mental toughness throughout that team. And most current teams are built on mental toughness. So I'm looking forward to seeing them on Thursday.
Scott checks back in. He says TB12 method. Nope. I'm not on it. Clearly, as you can tell. Stone's definitely not on it, clearly, as you can tell. Scott says, got to go with strawberry myself. So he's a strawberry Pop-Tart guy.
So
he also prefers toasted. So
I was going to say the strawberry
with cold milk.
So I'm a big milk guy. The strawberry one toasted is really good. I was going to say that earlier. Everything else I could eat plain.
Gotcha. He says, my keg just went dry. Have a good night, guys. Happy St. Patty's Day. Are you going to be partaking in some beverages tomorrow to celebrate St. Patty's Day?
Nope. As you know, I will be at BC. Friday,
well, after BC. You're not going to be at BC all day.
Well, I mean, kind of. By the time I get home, it's 2. But no, St. Patty's day drinking on St. Patty's on a Tuesday those days are over for me. But I will be up for March Madness on Friday, if you care.
So you'll be drinking on Friday?
Yes.
So now what are you going to be doing for March Madness that's going to lead to you drinking?
So it's usually a boys' day, get together with the old high school friends, go to Jake and Joe's, then head to a buddy's house for the night and watch the game till 11 and head home. So, as you know, I got to be at BC Saturday morning. So,
I know. You know what you don't do
anymore.
enough of, Kevin, is remind people that you go to BC. I think you should do that more often.
No, my point was I can't be hungover. So,
okay. You said it on, and by the way, you did a great job on Saturday on with Murray and Gasper on the Sports Hub. You made your Sports Hub debut.
Yes,
congratulations! You are now a grown-up. But again, you finished your segment by reminding people that you're the only one that goes to BC or that you're going to BC. Kevin, I'm here to tell you, we all know you go to BC. We all know you're going to be at BC. We appreciate what you do when you're at BC. We also would all appreciate if you stop telling us that you're going to BC. We know you're going to be there. Okay.
Just gonna make me do it more, but thank you.
Okay. So you're going to be that guy. You're going to double down. You're going to be double down douche, and you're just going to keep saying that you're going to BC.
It's a hell of a nickname. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, if there was ever a shoe that fits,
sure.
You're the foot.
It's about right.
Well, nonetheless, like I said, you did a great job on Saturday on with those guys.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you on there more often for sure. Don't forget to put them back on again, fellas. I thought Kevin did a great job. And if you missed them, I'm sure you can find it online. But again, as I mentioned, Kevin was on with Gasper and Murray on Saturday. Right after we finished up at BC and before we recorded our thoughts on Boston College spring practice. So it timed out well. And by the way, you are right. Holy Cross week 3, September 12th is playing at Miami of Ohio.
Miami, yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule, man. I mean, just looking at it first glance, You
It's a
got
thing.
Harvard, you got
Thank God
Yale,
does it
you
every
got
year.
Villanova, William and Mary. It's a tough schedule. The Patriot League now,
It's
you can
insane.
make the argument it's tougher than the CAA.
Oh, 100%. It might be the hardest league in FCS. And you and
Yeah.
I have both thought that that was the CAA for a long time. So between those two, there's a lot of local teams that um, they have a gauntlet to go through during the season.
Yeah. Oh, and I think you add three programs
Actually, in the Ivy
in
League.
yeah. You add three programs in Villanova, William and Mary, and Richmond that were Yankee Conference powers, CAA powers. I mean, these were the top programs in the CAA for
Yeah.
a long time. You no offense to the other programs in the CAA, but you didn't add them. You're adding the blue bloods of that conference to the Patriot League, which again is now going to put it up there with some of the other top FCS conferences, including the Ivy League. You can you can make the case it could be tougher than the Ivy League in a lot of ways.
100%. Although I do still think the Ivy League, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, you're recruiting the exact same kids, right? Like the geniuses, for lack of a better term, who just want to grind and play ball. But so I do think the Ivy League is probably still the toughest. And plus, it's 10 weeks with no bye. Like that's
Yeah.
so hard to get through. But all three of those leagues are insanely difficult.
Well, then that's just it. And think about, by the way, when you talk about 10 weeks and no bye, think about how hard it is to play in the Ivy League. That you play a full schedule over the course of 10 weeks. If you win the Ivy League and you get the automatic playoff bid or you get an at-large playoff bid, you keep going now. You could potentially play 12, 13, 14 games, which people are going to look at and say, all right, well, what's the big deal? The thing is, your guys don't get a bye. They play all the way straight through until they're done. So, yes, you start your season later, but it is a grind, especially last year for Harvard and Yale. It was truly challenging to play 11, 12 weeks in a row. That's tough to do.
I was just saying, you saw it with Harvard last year. They hit a wall. Like those last, you can even call it the last 4 weeks. They looked like a different team. Like that Harvard team was dominant for a lot of the regular season, and then you could just sort of slowly see it kind of fade out of them. The game, against Yale, that was never close. From the opening quarter, yeah, they made the scoreboard look a little better, but they were gassed, and you could feel it. The playoff game, they obviously got blown out, and that's what makes Yale's win, that wild comeback over Youngstown State, so insane. Is that they hadn't stopped playing in 10 weeks, still found a way to come back and advance in that first round of the playoffs. So I still think the Ivy is the hardest FCS conference because of that, the non-bye thing. But um, really, all three of those conferences that we talked about, they don't get enough credit.
No, no, they really don't. And I think you're 100% right. Um, so we'll see. And of course, you have the NEC as well. We mentioned Stonehill. I'll be going down to Easton on Saturday to check in with the Skyhawks. Central Connecticut State will be starting up here pretty soon. And talking about the CAA, Sacred Heart, who I mentioned, kicked off spring practice last week. They're going to be going into their first year in the CAA. A lot of expectations for Mark Knopfrey's squad. You got Mitchell Summers back at running back, John Mikulski at quarterback. This is a talented football team. Look, we know under Mark Knopfrey, they've always played pretty good defense. The difference last year for the Pioneers was their offense was really good. And one thing about Sacred Heart, yeah, they run the football as well as anybody in New England. They have a back year in and year out, and they usually go into New York to get those guys, seeing that they're so close there at Fairfield County. But I'm excited about Sacred Heart joining the CAA, man. I think they're a terrific addition. It gives us another school now where you can start to develop local rivalries. You can have a Sacred Heart Bryant rivalry. That could be a nice little border war. It's really really cool to see. I'm glad they're in, and I'm going to say it, and I've been on record as saying it. I want to see Merrimack end up in the CAA here. I know that for now the plan is for them to stay independent, but I think it would be really good for local college football if Merrimack also followed suit and joined Sacred Heart in the CAA.
I'm with you. That independent life, especially as an FCS school, is just
It's
so
tough.
hard.
Yeah, it's
Especially
tough.
recruiting. Recruiting
We
is
see
so
it with
much.
UConn.
Yeah, but at least in that case, you're an FBS school with some history. Getting kids to come play for Merrimack, Mike Giannetti deserves a lot of credit for some of the kids that he's gotten, um, even Dan Curran before him. So on Sacred Heart, the thing with them last year, they finished games. They found a way to finish late, which they hadn't done the last couple of years. So um, it stinks that CCSU is in the NEC and not in the CAA because that's obviously a great rivalry already. It'd be awesome if that was a conference rivalry. But I'm with you. It's good to see another team, and Sacred Heart versus UNH or Sacred Heart versus URI. Those are going to be really good games, and good double locals as well.
Yeah. Switching gears here to high school football before we wrap up the show, a couple of tidbits here. The NEPSAC schools had their signing day last week. Another big haul for Jeff Moore down at Tabor. Gets a big transfer in Liam Conlon from Catholic Memorial. That's a big one to get him to leave CM and playing for Coach Dibb to go down there. Makai Volsey, who played at Bedford High School, is going to do an extra year down at Avon Old Farms for Coach Hooley, as well as Christian McIntyre, the standout wide receiver from Zavarian, our Division One Player of the Year. He is also going to do a PG year down at Avon Old Farms for Coach Hooley. I mean, look, you want to get recruited as a PG, and there's 3 or 4 great landing spots in New England. Avon Old Farms is certainly one of them. Of course, you got Williston, Northampton, you've got Phillips, Exeter, but those guys they're gonna thrive down there playing for Coach Hooley, and the guys that are going to Tabor playing for Coach Moore as well. There were several other players that also moved, and I know it's hard. Public school coaches, it's a battle for public school coaches. It's become a battle for Catholic school coaches now, trying to stave off the private schools. But the reality is, it's a part of life now in football. You see Jeremiah Figaro, he leaves Malden Catholic, goes to play for Casey Day at Dexter. It is what it is. I know people don't like the idea of reclassifying. I think everybody's on board with doing a PG year, but people don't like the whole reclassifying phenomenon that we're seeing now in New England high school football. But it's here to stay, folks. It's not going anywhere. And whether you agree with it or not, and I have my opinions on it. Whether you agree with it or not, guys are going to reclassify. They're going to go somewhere if they feel that somewhere is going to help them develop and potentially get a scholarship.
Not only the scholarship, but kids are already thinking league right now. Like that's where we're at this point. It's okay. Well, if I go there in 6 years, can they help me get drafted or whatever the number is? So kids are already thinking that far ahead because they're either listening to the wrong people or listening to some of the right people who definitely think they can get drafted. So the scholarship is one thing, but kids have their eyes on really the league too. Um, so when you're getting paid and you have people telling you, well, we can get you to the NFL, whether they're serious or not, or whether they're just blowing smoke up a kid's ass, it's the parents buying into it. It's the high school coaches even buying into it. So there's a lot of lying going on, I think. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. But hey, if a kid's generally talented enough, and this isn't a knock on the private coaches either, because they're clearly getting kids drafted in, developed into legit college athletes and then drafted. Look at how much talent is leaving Massachusetts or Connecticut and going to the NFL draft. Call it the last decade or so. So yeah, if you can see your future in the NFL, go ahead. But there is still, and I know you feel the same way. I just have a problem with there being no town pride left or kids wanting to play for their own high school. But it is what it is now. Kids have their eyes either on the bag or on the NFL or both. So if they think they can get there, then they're going to try to go get there.
I hate to say it, Tom Pride's been gone for a while now, as you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah, I
we've
know.
been doing this now for New England Football Journal's been around for 7 years. We've been together for 6. And we know we've seen it. Those days are over, man. It's not look, and I think the hardest part of it all of this is it's hard to argue with a kid who says, "Hey, I want to go somewhere and take my chances that I'll get developed and have an opportunity to play college football on Saturdays and get paid to do it, and then eventually have an opportunity to potentially play in the NFL or play professionally." It's hard to argue with kids who want that's their goal. You know what I mean? And I think that gets lost on people sometimes. And then let's face it, it does. It gets lost on people. They don't see the reality here that it's easy to blame the kid. And I get it. We're living in a world now where kids love to announce where they're going to school and how they're blessed and how they're fortunate and all this other stuff. But if you get away from that look at me culture on social media, what you'll find, and I've seen this now speaking to some kids who've made that decision to go from public Catholic to private, when you speak to them one on one, they're very upfront and honest with you. This is all business for me. This is simply for development purposes and development purposes only. I'm not going to this school because I want to be on my third school in as many years or my third school in 4 years. I'm going there because I need the extra year. You look at a kid like Mackay Volsey, who played at Bedford High School. He played all 4 years at Bedford, committed to Boston College, which, as you know, is rare now to get a public school kid into Boston College or to get that kid even recruited for that matter. For every Mackay Volsey and Brady Beckenhauser ended up at Wisconsin, there's 50 kids that play public school, high school football that aren't getting recruited by Boston College. But at the end of the day, even a kid like Mackay Volsey realized, hey, look, I need to develop more. I need to play more. I need my body to get to a place where I can walk on at Boston College and be a contributor as soon as possible. Yeah, they yes, I've got the scholarship offer there. Yes, it's going to be there, but he had enough foresight and his family and support system, his coaches had enough foresight to say, "Hey, you know what? This could be good for you. Go play for a guy like John Hooley, who's known for developing talent. Let him develop you, and you'll be even more. You'll be further ahead and even more prepared to play at Boston College than you are right now." So yeah, as I say all the time, man, you can't fault the kids for that. I think a lot of kids, Kevin, are doing it for the right reasons. I know people are going to say, no, they're not. They're selfish. Their families are selfish. They don't care. But in the end, I think a lot of kids are doing it for the right reasons, and you can't fault them for that.
No, I 100% agree. And I don't want it to come off as like, me crapping on the private school coaches for doing what any good coach would do, and that's
Well,
trying to get good
that's their
talent.
job, by the way. Their
Yeah,
job
right.
is to work at admissions or whatever their on campus job is.
100%.
And the other part of their job is to recruit and get players in. And again, I know public and private and Catholic school coaches have a real problem with that. You and I had to listen to it for 2 weeks doing the clinics, talking to different coaches and getting their opinions on it. But at the end of the day, John Pappas used to say, and whether you like Pap or not, he won a lot of games at BBNN, successful coach. But Pappas used to say it all the time that, hey, part of my job is to get kids into the school, is to bring kids in. And guess who they're going to target? They're going to target the public school kids. And now, as we're seeing more and more often, they're targeting the Catholic school kids.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on all of this. My biggest problem is people giving kids the bad advice, or the parents taking the bad advice from the certain um, private coaches or whatever it might be. Because for every 10 kids that are doing it right, there's one or two who are doing it for all the wrong reasons, and that's the biggest problem. But I know it's hard to weed those out. So I guess I don't really have an answer. Um, to I guess you can call it a problem, but you're right. It's the coaches' jobs, and look for us, it's good because we're covering the talent either way. Like the talent in Massachusetts and really New England has never been better, and it's because of a lot of these kids taking the extra year or two to develop. But it also hurts the public school aspect as well. So it's to your point. There's no common ground, and I don't think there's going to be for a while.
No, I agree. I agree. A couple of other news and notes before we wrap up here. Peter Bork picked up a Miami offer today, so another big time offer for Tabor's quarterback. Christopher Vargas last week, St. John's prep quarterback, picked up an Alabama offer. So good for those guys. Again, the big time offers are rolling in for both of them, which is nice to see. As far as the spring showcases, and believe it or not, they're only a couple months away. The Connecticut Spring Showcases will be on Monday, May 11th. The Massachusetts NEPSAC Spring Showcases will be on Tuesday, May 12th. The Catholic Conference Spring Showcases will be on Thursday, May 14th. As far as we know, that'll be at Zavarian again. And the MVC, Coach Fielding reached out to me this morning to let me know that the MVC is going to be doing their spring showcase on Monday, May 18th. The Hockomock League, I believe, is doing theirs that Sunday again, which is once again Mother's Day. That's Sunday, May 10th. I'm waiting to confirm that. When we confirm it, as always, when we get all the dates, my hope is we get all the dates this week, because if we get all the dates this week, we'll throw up a piece on it on anyfootballjournal.com to get you all the information you need for those spring showcases. And as always, we're going to try to cover as many of them as possible. We're going to try to cover them down in Connecticut. We're going to try to cover them up here in Massachusetts as well. So, as always, follow along with us at anyfootballjournal.com. All right, Stone, any final thoughts here before we put a bow on this show and send it into the memory bank?
Nope, got nothing. Stay with us. We'll have continued spring visits, and Patriots OTAs are going to be here in like a month. So that's pretty crazy to think, but we should have more access with them as well coming up. So plenty more Patriots content too.
Yeah, and I'm sure in about a month from now, you'll be reminding us that you're going to BC and that you're the only one that goes to BC every day. So, looking forward to that as well.
Just go ahead. I'll leave it there.
And by the way, I will say the other day, when we did our little breakdown after our spring visit, in all seriousness, I bust your chops about this. But if you want to know how much he commits to Boston College football and why he is the number one Boston College football reporter / analyst in this market, go back and watch that video. You're not going to get this. And I'm not disrespecting. There's a lot of really good people covering Boston College football now. Kevin and I will tell you, when we first partnered up 2019, 2020, it was really just us and the papers that were there. Now you've got a lot of other outlets that are involved. But go back and watch that video, because you want to talk about somebody who knows the in and outs of that program. It's him right here. And he'll tell you, I'm not always nice to him. He pisses me off half the time. I still think the world of him. But watch that video if you want to see just how much intel he has when it comes to Boston College football. If you care about the BC football program, he's your guy. All right,
So
that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you next week. Until then, have a happy, healthy, and safe week. And as always, peace.
yeah.